This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
Welcome to the EDIC meeting for June 17th, 2025. Do I have the agenda open? No, of course I don't. Here it is. I would like to start with the fact that we will not be joined by City Planner Allison Manuel today. She let me know about an hour ago that she wouldn't be able to make it. So we will have less to speak of than we might otherwise. And other than that, we have April minutes for the group to approve.
In January.
Are we approving January too?
Yep.
All right. Well, gosh, you want to do that as did I write just April or did I do?
Oh,
Man, I wrote April. It's okay. We're going to approve both of them. Do you want to do them summarily as just one set of minutes? Has everybody had a chance to review? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Would someone like to offer a motion?
I will.
Wonderful. What is it?
A motion to approve the January and April minutes.
Fantabulous. Do we have a second?
Second.
Outstanding. Any further discussion about the minutes before we get into it? Okay. All in favor of approving both January and April minutes, holler aye visibly or audibly. Great stuff.
Aye.
That's unanimous approval. Thank you, Cassie. Okay. There's nobody here from the public. We don't have planning department updates. Allison did say that if anybody has particular questions, she would welcome them and we can send them to her the same way I send out the meeting reminders where we BCC everybody so there's not an open meeting violation and nobody's responding to anybody else. So does anybody have any questions they'd like to pose to Allison? Tom Brown.
Not to Allison, but to the group. We spoke briefly last month about the project that was going to the planning board, the Pleasant Street development. I did attend that meeting last month, and it was surprisingly tame. The biggest concern was traffic. That's a concern everywhere.
Yeah.
That you know, when the Northampton Street Hasty Top project comes online, this project comes online, they're just concerned about more traffic. That's never been a reason for the planning board to not approve a project. Other than that, the planning board had specific questions about snow removal and parking and stuff like that, but it seems like a project that's more than likely going to get approved.
Okay.
I don't know how many more meetings it will take. We spoke last month about potentially, if we were so inclined, to send a letter of support to the planning board just because it's more housing. It's 42 units of market rate housing, condominiums.
That's a great point.
Just to put that in context, the first condominium development on Loudville Road, those condominiums sold in the low 700,000s.
And these are not going to be that.
Correct. The current, well, they're going to be market rate though, so who knows? But the current project on off of Loudville Road, near Ashley Circle, those are selling in the low 6s.
Okay.
These are believed that they will sell in the low 4s.
Yeah, that's what I had read.
So they'll still be market rate, but they will be somewhat obviously more affordable than the last two projects.
Sure. Interesting.
Walkable to downtown, potentially another connection between the Mill District and downtown, walkable to Northampton Street.
Yeah.
Do these qualify as
study?
infill?
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just wondering if this counts as like infill in terms of our master plan? Or like,
It
Or is
certainly
that-
counts as greater tax revenue because right now we get no taxes from it.
right. I'm just wondering in terms of like, when people talk about,
Like density.
trying to build in density.
Yeah.
As opposed to building out and taking land out of natural reserves. Like, this does seem like it would be considered urban infill, correct?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, more so, Dave, than the Tasty Top project, which,
Much more so, yeah.
this, it's in a heavily residential neighborhood.
Right.
Adding more residents to more neighborhoods. It's not huge by some stand. I mean, it's not like when the planes were built out in Easthampton or something like that, but 42 units, 9 of them are within the existing church.
And did the traffic study not say that we actually might see diminished traffic? Because currently there's a daycare situation there. There's no
My
longer like church services on the weekend.
Yeah, my understanding, Gwen, is that the developer used the daycare traffic flow and the traffic flow from the church services. However, the church has been closed for 15 years.
Right, it hasn't been functioning like that, so it's not going to be relative to now.
Right, but they tried to use that data, and I don't think the planning board bought it, and I believe they're going to be asking for a full-blown traffic study.
I think that makes sense.
Just because the data on the church operating, well, I agree, while on the weekends, there would have been a ton of cars in and out there Saturday afternoon and Sunday mornings. Because that hasn't happened for 15 years, there's a new norm there. And the new norm is only people coming in and out for the daycare in the morning and the afternoon.
And only on weekdays.
And only on weekdays. So I think there's going to be a traffic study.
Okay. I've not kept my eye on planning board agendas. Do we want to decide whether we'd like to write a letter of support? Because we have many letters of support for similar kinds of projects. It would not be hard. Like, we basically have a template. We would, I mean, because it doesn't exist right here, right now, and I don't necessarily want to take the time right now to craft that letter. I would recommend that we, like, presuming that the final planning board meeting doesn't happen between now and our next scheduled meeting in July, then we're fine. Otherwise, we need to have a little 3-minute emergency meeting.
I don't see any reason why not to support it, to issue a letter of support now.
Okay.
I guess one of my thoughts too, Gwen, I didn't see it in the final agenda, but I thought you had on there something about potential for not meeting in July and August as we've done in some years past.
Yeah, I totally forgot to put it in the final formal agenda, but I did put it in the email to you guys. I do want to talk about that.
Right. So if we didn't meet until September, that would be, again, we could have some sort of emergency meeting, but kind of tough to do that in the summertime sometimes.
Can be. I feel like if we were to use our template for such a thing, you could send that beforehand, make sure that people have had a chance to read it, and it would truly last 3 minutes. And I think that the 5 of us could find 3 minutes somewhere in 90 days.
Yeah, that works.
So
and I would suggest, Gwen, using some of that language Dave just said about infill.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Housing density, urban infill. Yeah.
Walkable to downtown, walkable transit.
Connection to buildings.
Utilizing close and public transportation.
Yep. We've talked about the value of having a stronger connection along that stretch of Pleasant Street between Mills and like the Rotary and Main Street area, and that sort of underlines that there's a connection there, and that is one big neighborhood.
Right.
Okay. Well, do we need to vote on that, or shall I just write it and we'll vote on it in the future? Do we know?
I think we can vote on it and just say, like, based on last template that we used, we're authorizing the same for this project.
Yeah, Gwen, if we vote on it, can we trust you and you just send it?
I don't know. You tell me. Can you trust me?
Cassie
I'll
said
send
no.
you the final version.
Not
Yeah.
with that look, jeez.
Send us
That
the
will be,
final.
I will put a stamp of my face on the letter.
I make a motion that the EDIC sends a letter of support for the Pleasant Street project, housing project.
Any second?
I will.
Cassie seconds, okay. Any further discussion required? All right, all in favor, holler aye. Visibly aye. Okay, great. Write a letter to planning board, put it on the list. Also, guys, I'm not doing a great job in this role. I said sometime in the last 60 days that I would get in touch with the building inspector. I didn't do that. I will. I think because we're interested in following up on what's going on with our vacant storefront situation.
Well, also the Airbnb situation.
Yes. Yeah. So we want to have a little interview with them.
Right.
Okay.
Because wasn't the building inspector the one that was
issuing the cease and desist? Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Yep.
Yep.
And the vacant storefront and Airbnb. Okay. And lovely.
Has the city council brought that up again in terms of crafting rules for Airbnb and small rentals?
I don't know that. They have so much going on in the month of June. I don't know what they are tackling.
I think it might have got a little bit backburner, Dave, because the pressure was off when the mayor issued that cease and desist. So the pressure was off. It wasn't harming any of the existing Airbnbs. So it might be one of those things that they need to get to, but there's not a huge rush.
Yeah, that might be a summer thing after June when the budget is all set. But I will look. All right. Are there other planning department related topics that we want to talk about amongst ourselves right now?
There was, I guess, going to be an update, or there was a discussion. It was supposed to be for the planning board meeting of this month, earlier this month, but I guess it got delayed regarding, I think it was the wayfinding and parking situation of the mills.
Right.
It was more about the parking situation than the wayfinding that we've been talking about.
Yeah. I
believe the impetus for that was Food Truck Friday.
Hmm.
But I can't remember. I think it got delayed. I think it was supposed to be a week or two ago.
At City Council?
I think so.
Interesting.
Or at least a planning board meeting.
Okay. Well, we can do some reconnaissance and find out.
We actually went to our first Food Truck Friday, and I was like surprised, shocked at how many people were there.
That's great.
Yeah, it was ridiculous how many people were there.
I guess David has created a parking problem.
Well, I think, and this is my take of the situation is that, you know, the parking lot is technically owned by 3 different mill owners. Different parts of the parking lot are actually owned by the mill owners.
Yeah.
So when the event is in the middle of the 3 buildings, the buildings on either side get a little peeved that their property is being used.
Yeah.
Cry me a river.
I could be completely wrong in that, but I think it was regarding like how people were supposed to park, where they were supposed to park, and how to get there and everything else like that. Especially because, there is limited parking. So for example, like the Keystone building on Pleasant Street has limited parking up top. And people
Yeah.
were parking up top and making it so the tenants couldn't park there.
Yeah.
So I think it was one of those situations where, because of the lack of wayfinding, people are parking wherever they can, and then causing situations for people in the buildings themselves.
This is one of those times when I look at the parking lots throughout the mill area and go, a little paint would go a long way on the tarmac. And by tarmac, I mean whatever parking lots are made of.
Yeah, the only one who's really Mike Michon, speaking of Mill 180, has done a good job of, he's got designated parking areas A, B, C, and D, and communicates with people in his buildings where the appropriate parking lots are for his, for his parking zones. I don't think anybody outside of a tenant who has the foresight to actually review the parking rules has any idea what those parking zones mean.
Correct.
So I think that's part of the challenge. But I think it was Tom's point earlier, the location of the spots do not necessarily correlate to their location or distance to the buildings.
Yeah.
So, for example, I know that some of the spots that actually belong to Mill 180 might technically be closer to Keystone, and vice versa. Also, I know from a previous conversation with Mike Michon, the yellow building on the end, that's between the end of the Bills and the Legion Hall, has no parking. That's one of the challenges with that building, is that, like if Mike wanted to be a jerk, they physically could not have access to that building. So there's some interesting dynamics about parking in general around those mill buildings that I know might come into play if this goes further.
Interesting.
Right. I think that's what the planning meeting was about, was trying to come up with a solution, or at least signage. Because I noticed that they also put a big lit display in the parking lot of Eastworks to tell people where to park for Food Truck Friday. I think that was a little nudge, in my opinion. But
yeah. Well, I don't know if that. So you think that has already been to planning board and been a conversation there?
I think it was postponed. I think it was supposed to be 2 weeks ago.
Okay, so it might be coming up.
Yeah.
Interesting. I kind of wonder if there's a conversation to have with abandoned building, et cetera, about incentives you could offer to people like they do at the Northampton Farmers Market, like some kind of dollar discount or something. If you ride your bike, show us your bike helmet, get a $1 discount, then you don't have to park a car. Or you walked here or something. I don't know.
Did I hear somewhere, Dave Del Vecchio, did I hear somewhere that Mike was offering parking at 1 ferry or 3 ferry, whichever number it is, for Food Truck Fridays?
If he is, I'm unfamiliar with it.
Okay, I thought I read that somewhere.
It's possible. Mike's, I mean, it sounds like something Mike would do, but I'm not familiar with that specifically.
I heard something about Ferry Street parking, and when I heard Ferry Street parking, I thought that was the only possible place it could be.
Unless they were just pointing out that you could park in the Millside Pond parking lot, which is accessible off of Ferry.
Yeah, that could be. That could be.
I haven't seen that 3 or 5 Ferry Street parking lot be very full ever. That's interesting.
Well, and a lot of the 1 ferry building or 3 ferry, whatever it is, the one closest to the corner is predominantly industrial or business.
Right.
So commercial. So I think a lot of the parking that you do see in that particular building, in that lot that's closest to the mills, is probably pretty empty by the time food truck time rolls around on Friday nights.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay. Well, we will put that on a future agenda / check into it. I'll follow up with y'all. Any other planning department related things other than, do you want to talk more about the wayfinding question, Dave? Have we already talked about checking in with Pasqualino Azzarello and the arts people?
I mean, I think it's not the arts people, it's
Okay.
the planning department. I think it's purely planning department now.
Okay.
And
I mean, I
think,
know Pasqualino is part of the planning department, but I think
Sure.
it's like above her pay grade.
Okay.
and didn't Allison say that it was at some point and she was going to go back and figure out what point it was at and pick it up from there and keep it going? So she
Yeah.
kind of just said to us, we'll get back to you on that.
All right. So we'll just keep it on the agenda. Climate action plan business participation. Cassie, anything you want to share?
No update.
Okay. Oh, right. This article that I sent you all from the Gazette about rising costs pushing small businesses to closure as they demand sweeping reforms from legislators. So I sent you guys that article. I think it's from June 1st. And listen, why are you on EDIC, Gwen? I think having an economy in this town is a good thing, and that is the extent of my knowledge. I am enthusiastic, and that is why I do this, not because I know a ton. So reading that article, some of it was like, okay, I believe them. I have no follow-up questions because I do not know what kinds of follow-up questions to ask. A couple of you wrote to me and had some opinions, but now's our opportunity to have a more open discussion about whether there is anything for us to take from that article about taxes, regulations, anything like that, and move forward with any kind of our own follow-up questions for businesses in our own city or advocacy efforts we'd want to undertake, anything like that. Cassie.
I actually read the article.
Okay, that is
Pardon.
why I sent it.
And it seemed that some of the drivers for businesses' troubles are outside of our scope of control. Health insurance, no one can control it. Unemployment insurance. The one thing that did seem to me was energy costs, and not just because of the EAC, but I know we're moving towards aggregation, and I don't know if that's going to help with people's electrical costs. And I was wondering if maybe it would be worth the communication to businesses saying, here's this article, this is one thing we can help you with, and offer resources to businesses to reduce their energy costs, or advice, or yeah, that's kind of where I am.
Dave, have you heard anything from through the chamber of the types of struggles that small businesses are facing that were outlined in that article?
Not necessarily what was outlined in the article. I think, when people think of the chamber, when they articulate whatever pain points they're having, it's usually around things like network building, network nurturing, building their network to be able to, increase sales and business. So I think they think of it more as a revenue driver than an expense driver. But I think with John as the new ED, he's having more and more conversations. Actually, it's funny, we have not talked about building on any momentum of this article and leveraging it as a discussion point, but it might be an interesting one that we can use to maybe solicit a little bit of feedback from chamber members on their concerns. For me personally, I mean, honestly, for years, health insurance has been tied to your employer. It was added as an employer benefit. Yeah, it's as people don't work for companies for 40 years anymore for the gold watch. Tom, your experience, you're probably one of the last folks that are going to have that sort of an experience. We were working in even an industry, let alone a single employer for
Just
an
for the
entire.
record, I didn't get a gold watch.
Well, yeah, it's an aluminum foil, wrapper. But no, in any case, with AI, first the gig economy is now, putting a wedge into that paradigm. Now you've got, as more jobs end up getting impacted further by technology, at some point we're going to end up with an awful lot of the population that's not going to be covered by health insurance if it starts impacting employability. And it's just one of those things that I think, to Cassie's point, I think this is probably way outside of our purview, but this is going to become an increasingly difficult scenario to navigate, because over time you're going to have a larger and larger percentage of the population who are not going to be able to get health insurance through employers. And so at least we live in a state that's got its own health program, which is better than most. We innovated on that front. But I'll get off my soapbox now. It's one of those things. But before I sold my business, honestly, one of the things I was happy about once we did was that I didn't have to pick a health insurance plan anymore. Like, why should health insurance and retirement planning be the purview of a small business owner? I wasn't an expert in either. So. 401k plans should be individually managed, and health plans should be individually managed, and employers should pay their employees more so they can afford to pay for both. That's my 2 cents.
You heard it here. The man's on record.
That's right.
David Kutcher, you had an opinion about that article. You don't have to, you can share as much or as little as you'd like. I am interested to know whether you think there is anything that we should latch onto, even like tangentially.
So in terms of actionable items, I think the part that Easthampton misses is when it comes to having to do the paperwork for permitting things in the city, that for the sheer amount of paperwork that's necessary, there isn't a resource able to successfully help you to streamline and get through that paperwork. Going to City Hall to do that paperwork is not a fun thing to do. And I think that when we start piling on more and more paperwork and more things like, for example, like getting a liquor license or a one-day liquor license, we need to optimize those things because we can, but also so that we're encouraging people to do more. Because if it wasn't so onerous, we might do more of it. Whether it's a one-day food truck, or whether it's a wine tasting, or whether it's, I want to incorporate a partnership, or any number of things. I'm not saying get rid of the permitting. I'm saying we need to figure out a way to streamline the permitting that takes place and have a person there in City Hall who can help us do that as quickly and as efficiently as possible, if not even having those things available through the website. Which brings me to another part, which is the city website sucks for finding answers. It does. It just sucks. But
it was revamped, Kutcher. It was revamped.
Yeah, it was revamped and just as awful as it was before. So let's say, hypothetically speaking, you want to have chickens in your backyard. I would encourage you to try to find the answer on the city website on how many chickens you can have and what square footage your yard needs to be. Or if you need to get any permits. Good luck finding the answer to that. There's no FAQ section, there's no nothing. Heaven help you if you try to Google search it within or use their search on the website. You'll never find it. It's simple, stupid things like that the city can be doing to help people and help the city grow.
Yeah, I would chime in and agree with Dave that when the city puts certain regulations in place, they sort of, like chickens, they sort of set it and forget it. So they pass a regulation and God help you if you need the permit to comply with that regulation, because you won't, you might need an attorney to help you figure it out. I've often said on some of these boards that when an applicant comes before them and the first thing out of their mouth is, I have concerns, when it would be great if the first thing out of the mouth was, let's see how we can help you get this done. So you need a permit for Tasty Top, or you need a permit for this. Let's see how we can help you get this done. But the first words inevitably out of their mouth is, I have concerns about this project. I have concerns about this permit. I have concerns about this, whatever. Let me see how I can help you get this done.
Yeah,
It's an
it's
attitude.
it's the basics of customer service, which
Yeah.
is that our city government is supposed to be working for us.
Yeah.
And like you said, for every new policy, whatever decision, they have to be the ones that have to be able to explain it, but also optimize it, because they're making us jump through more hurdles to get stuff done. And like I said, this is not about getting rid of regulations. It's about the customer service of helping us move through those regulations to a
Yes.
successful outcome.
Yeah. Do we think that there is a nearby town that has a good website only approach to this?
So when the city website went out for bid, they had the choice between a number of providers like Civic Plus and a
Mhm.
number of other CRM system and CMS CRM systems that were specifically geared to small cities and towns.
Mhm.
Instead, they chose to go with a local web developer.
Mhm.
If they had gone the other route, I bet we would have had a solution in place that would have had things like be able to search a PDF document for answers.
Yeah. Okay.
That's, yeah. I complained about it 10 years ago when this first happened,
Sure.
but it's, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like Dave Delvecchio was saying, like, there's so many things that are out of our control, like the cost of health insurance,
Sure.
or the cost of energy, or the cost
Yeah.
of whatever, or inflation, or yada, yada, yada. But this is one that I think, like, the city government, if they make the hurdles easier to jump, like Tom was saying, you know, having it so that people are like, I have this idea, and they can go to City Hall, and there's a person there who can walk them through all the paperwork necessary to
Yeah.
accomplish their idea, as opposed to saying, well, I don't know, I find this problematic.
Sure.
Like, it's a whole different mentality.
Yeah. I wonder how, this is sort of a meta thought, but how tied is that to our zoning ordinances collection, which is something like 16 times longer than it needs to be?
Hmm.
I'm not going to say it's not needlessly complex. I think things are worth being complex, but having someone guide you through a process that should be accomplishable by your average citizen makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think I'm not quick to blame it on the regulations, as complex as they might be,
Oh,
because
no.
it could be someone like Dave simply looking to apply for a one-day liquor license, and doesn't have, an employee he can hand this to and say, go take care of this. Personally, I think it's an attitude change, and I don't know how you affect an attitude change throughout all of city government that
Yeah.
says, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you.
Okay, Reagan. Yeah, no, I don't think it's about the regulations themselves. I'm just thinking about the parallel that we seem to have with sort of an angry collection of zoning ordinances where we're like, ooh, that's a big collection you got there. that seems hard, and it makes everything just a little more difficult. And so we've heard from developers that they're like, I don't really want to come and build here. You got a lot of problems in your zoning, like things that overlap and don't make sense and don't agree. And so, fair enough. Yeah, attitude change. Is that in our wheelhouse? I don't know.
I'm thinking it's endemic to municipal government. That these departments are their own fiefdoms with their own embedded processes that provide structure for the employees, and therefore they want to adhere to it. That's been my experience here and that other place.
I wonder, Gwen, at a minimum, if there should be between now and November some sort of mayoral forums with the three candidates.
Ooh.
That might be a great place to land that question.
Ooh.
Here's our perception of the attitude. Do you have any suggestions on how you might change that? And for somebody that might be a softball question, but for somebody it might be make everybody squirm.
I really like that idea, Tom.
Yeah, it's a good idea. All right. Is there anything else that we want to say about that article that made us think about anything else?
Except that might be something that we've latched onto that we do have some control over. Like Dave said, health insurance and, 401ks and all that stuff, or cost of energy, what have you. There may not be a lot of things we can help small businesses with, but if we can begin the process, and it might be a slow process of affecting assistance rather than resistance.
Yeah.
It sounds like a slogan, doesn't it?
It
Assistance
does.
rather than resistance.
Ooh, do we need a slogan? We have a mission.
That could be something we do have control over.
So just to give you like a for instance, let's say my son wanted to have a iced coffee cart and sell iced coffee on the rail trail. What permitting would he need to get, and who would he need to get it from? Like, where would you even start? Like, so you have someone who wants to start a business, but then jumping through the permitting hoops is where like good ideas go to die.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this is a great topic. I like it. I think we should talk about it more. We should noodle on it in the intervening time and come back to it, because I dig it. And I believe I will just dictatorially be saying assistance, not resistance, is our new slogan.
There you go.
Okay. Great. I love it. And there's nothing else on the agenda except the last line, which is our next scheduled meeting. My question for you is, with the context that in recent years, we have chosen not to have an August meeting. And I think last year we didn't have a July meeting either.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to take off 1 to 2 months? If we take off July and August, I won't see you again till September. Does that feel fine? Does that feel like something will come up? Probably. Will it be urgent? Can't know. Thoughts?
Gwen, the Council on Aging board that I serve on pretty much takes July and August off also, with the caveat that should something arise, they would call a meeting, knowing that it takes a week and a half to be able to call a meeting to get an agenda out there. So there's plenty of lead time if need be.
Yeah.
It's like everybody goes on vacation right after Memorial Day and doesn't come back till Labor Day.
Yep. Does anyone have a different opinion or the same opinion? Or any
I just
feelings
checked. I'm actually around for the next two what would be scheduled meetings, but
Okay.
and also don't know. You would have better understanding of historical perspective as far as is the city typically much quieter in the summertime too? So there's not usually as much to comment on anyway.
Yeah, it really depends. I mean, city council reduces the frequency of their meetings, I think, in July and August. So it would not be without precedent. What I think I would propose is that we hold that, and I will write to you all when is the meeting? July 15th, ostensibly.
Mhm.
I will write to you on July 1st and to Allison and find out whether she's got stuff that she wants to bring to us, and we can decide then whether we actually hold it. And you can tell me whether you'll be available or if we need to budget till a different time. Does that sound all right?
That
That
sounds
works.
perfect. And Gwen, when you said about city council curtailing meetings, I believe the planning board does also
Do they?
in the summertime.
Okay.
And then we take August off.
We can.
I'm just asking for the minutes, that's all.
We can. I don't have a problem with that. Want to say that?
Sounds great.
We'll assume that we will tentatively say, put a hold on July 15. You'll know by July 7-ish whether we're going to have a meeting. And August is off.
So our next meeting would be September 16th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Got it.
Sounds like a plan.
Cool. Anything else that you know right now you want to talk about in the future? All right, great. I'll ask you again in like 2 weeks. Super duper. Would anyone like to move to get us all out of here early?
Motion to adjourn.
Fantastic. Any second? Kutcher. Great. All right. In the absence of further discussion, I don't see people beating down the comment button. Shall we approve to leave? Yeah. Great. Good. Everybody's got a good nod. All right.
Yep.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Get your umbrella. Get your AC in. It's going to be brutal.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.